Thanks everybody for joining us today. This should say FY23. Today's workshop is going to be a brief overview of Comprizon, just the basic work screen, navigation, reporting searches, workspace utility and organization. We're going to cover some basics for inputting your requisition into C.Request. We're going to talk about creating CLINs, accounting codes. We're going to talk about the process for de-obligations, realignments, as well as the internal review and approval process. And we'll also dig into some just very briefly about the strategic sourcing portfolio if you are inputting a requisition for that. Nothing too crazy or different, but just wanted to make sure that we are covering that. If you don't have your mic on mute, I will go ahead and mute everyone right now, but please make sure that you are, if you do have a question, you raise your hand or post it in the chat, and Julian or I will get to you. And if not, go ahead and get started in one moment. Sorry, Ronnie, do you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, I got a quick question. I'm pretty proficient in doing the contracts. However, the problem that I have is who do I send it to after I complete it? And I was wondering, are you going to cover that today? Or if by the end of this, maybe you could give us a list of what each office is supposed to do and who we're supposed to forward it to? Because since the pandemic, it's kind of been in a tailspin for me trying to figure out where it's supposed to go. And it's been held up several months in some cases. And I just want to get a clear picture of who I'm supposed to send all this to when it's completed.
We will be covering some of that, but that sounds like an internal process, to be quite honest with you, Ronnie. All right. I'm just covering the basic like system, the system functions of C-Suite. You're talking about a review, like a routing process, and that's internal to your organization. I don't have that information, so I think you would need to probably work with somebody within your office.
Oh, okay. I've tried that a couple of times, but I'm gonna reroute it. And we've got a new person that took over as the CO, so I believe she'll be able to square that all away. I was just a little confused of who or how many times it's supposed to be reviewed before it goes to the CO person in charge of our department. So thanks anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, we can kind of talk about that process, but I think what you're describing is something that you need to work out within your own organization, because from a kind of a big picture standpoint, I'm just talking about how we get from the C.Request, from the C.Request side. You input your requisition, you input like all the different CLINs, accounting codes, et cetera, and then just the bare bones internal review and approval process as prescribed by the OAM policy. It's like each organization has your own business process that you need to adhere to. That's not something that I can provide information on. So you're going to have to work with somebody within your own office, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I was just checking to see if you guys knew. How do I turn this hand off? You do that?
Nope. I think you're gonna have to manage that. And I'm gonna get started here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
sorry.
Real quick, just click on it again, Ronnie. And by the way, this is Antonio, and I will talk with you offline with regards to the routing. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and click mute all, and we're going to get started. All right, so what you are seeing here is a login screen of C.Request, and this is in the test environment with system administration access. So you'll be seeing a lot more menu options than you will likely have. So for those of us who are familiar with Comprizon, each menu screen is going to look pretty similar to this. The main menu on the left side, this is going to be where you can go to different types of screens, different types of take different types of actions, navigate to different places within the system. The actual information that you are looking at for the current screen that you're on is always going to be grouped in the center and is going to be organized by different tabs. Because we're at the home screen right now, the different tabs that I have available are just in, my hot list, recently accessed, worksheet, and alerts and messages. This is your workspace utility organization. So any new documents that are assigned to you will be appearing in your just in tab. That will probably appear less frequently since you're going to be creating documents. Your hot list is your bookmarks. So you can add things to your hot list. You can remove things from your hot list. Let me give you an example of how to do that. So I'm going to click into this requisition. I'm going to scroll on the left side down to add to hot list. Since it's already in my hot list, I'll have this this red message show up. And I can also remove that from my hot list as well. Recently accessed is going to be a tab of any documents opened within the last 30 days. Your worksheet is going to be the entire repository for everything that you have within C.Request. These are basically all the requisitions that you have created. You'll be able to sort and search through using the different drop downs here. For example, I have the document type set to requisition. Most of you will have only requisition. You'll be able to sort by the document status. So I have it flagged to submitted. I could also change it to unsubmitted, or I can change the procurement status. So notice that when I had it as submitted under document status, the procurement status drop down changed. So if you know that there's a requisition that you're trying to track, like for example, if you were a core and you're trying to track that submitted requisition, you can see, okay, I know that it's going to be fully awarded or partially awarded. I can set that procurement status to that, press search, and then every document with a fully awarded status will populate. I'm going to clear all the search fields. You can also set a default search. So if you only work on a certain kind of thing, or if you are only working on mods or something like that, or requisitions for de-obligations, you could also just kind of set like a default search that will populate every time that you pull up here. Let's talk about some reports and searches. So if you're trying to find work that a coworker or a team member has worked on that maybe you just want to use to copy that requisition, you'll have an option. Most of you will have an option that says Office Procurement Search. Some of you will have Procurement Search. The difference here is that cores typically will have access to Procurement Search because that gives them access to C awards. So they'll be able to pull open awards and take a look at the forms and the structure there to perform their functions as cores. If you're not a core, you probably will only have Office Procurement Search. So I'm going to click into this and give you just an example of what that might look like. I'm just going to enter in this under the contains drop down for anything that has a -22. So everything in my office within those parameters will appear. So only things that are within your office, and your office is tied to your profile. So that is something that, for example, if some of you are on detail, or if you've left your organization, if you've moved to a different organization, we can change your profile, your office profile, in your user profile, and that will map to Office Procurement Search. Likewise, if I make everything blank and I just press search, it will populate with everything that was in my office. And this is how you would search for, let's say, everything. But if you want to be more specific, you could, for example, search by date. You could do fiscal year, FY21 for requisitions, and everything within those parameters will populate here. Moving back to the home page, let's talk about some of the standard reports that we have available to us, and we'll be able to cover this later, or if you have any interest in exploring some of these standard reports, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can do kind of a small session with your team or your organization or whoever you would need to kind of go over some of these reports. So in C.Request, we only have a couple of things available to us. Again, if you're a core, you will probably have a little bit more reporting capabilities. Requisition register is going to be kind of the default one that populates, and this is going to this is a report that is going to populate the entire population of reports depending on what your search parameters are. So right now, the button is defaulted to all dates. If I click date range, I can establish a date range. So let's do fiscal year 23 to date. It can sort by these parameters: creation date, delivery date, FSC/PSC code, status, or the user. And I can choose either submitted or unsubmitted, and I'll click generate. It should open up an Excel spreadsheet, and I'll go ahead and just switch to that just so you can take a look at what that looks like. So for example, this is the requisition register report for FY23 to date. This will contain every requisition within C-Suite. So just kind of be aware as you're using some of those reports. There are also some custom and custom BERT reports, which are reports that have been created by the department. They can provide different types of metrics or some different business intelligence. Again, if you're interested in some of those custom reports that already exist, please reach out to us and we'll get you started down that path. I'm going to briefly talk about our quick reference guide, which is available on the portal. We will be going over a lot of the functions or a lot of the information that exists on this quick reference guide, but I just wanted to make sure that we all had a chance to take a look at some of the information that was available here. And again, this is something that we advertise to customers that is available on the portal. And we'll re-upload this as we have some updates. For example, all purchases for supplies or services above the $10,000 threshold are required to be submitted via C.Request. So that's a change. I believe the previous number was 3,500. So I think that affects some P card holders in that way. We're going to talk about de-obligation structuring, realignments, the internal review and routing controls, the PR structures for a new award, and this is more specifically in regards to the strategic sourcing portfolios. You'll just want to give this a look, and we'll cover some of this information as well as we go through our basic input of C.Request, just to make sure that you have the actual vehicle placed within the title, as well as the parent IDV for that vehicle, if possible. This will help enterprise services recognize what vehicle you're actually wanting to create an order, or that we're wanting to create an order for. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, and then I'm going to pass the reins over to Julian, and I'll be fielding any questions that you may have. So please give us one moment while we have Julian share his screen.
Hi, everyone. One moment. Let me get this shared. All right, so I am going to show everyone the basic requisition inputs. So when you're basically how to input the information on a requisition. First off, can everyone see my my shared screen?
Yep.
All right. Fantastic. So so like Tim was saying earlier, actually, I think I'm going to go over creating the PID first. So let's do that. So when you're creating a requisition, you're going to come to the screen here. And again, I am in a test environment. Also, because of my security measures, you might see more information here in the main menu than you have access to. But you will have, if you are a requisitioner, you will have access to create a requisition. So to create one, we're going to click on requisition. And we have the requisition pin and name. And this is where you would click on your office and create a requisition. So once your requisition is created, you'll get to this screen here, and you want to click on administration. Now notice in administration, we have asterisks here. Anything with an asterisk is required information for saving and submitting this requisition and committing this requisition. So you want to make sure you have things like the requisition date, the delivery date, point of contact, anything with an asterisk you want filled out. The purpose statement is very important. This is where you want to have the information of what exactly the purpose is for this requisition. Obligation, deobligation, what you're trying to accomplish with this requisition. Also here where it says contract number, notice there is no asterisk here. But if you're doing something like a mod, you want to make sure that the original awards contract number is here. This lets the CS, the contract specialist, know what award is being modded. So that's where you would input this information. Notice there's 3 tabs and we're in the administration tab. I'm now going to go to the funding tab. There's there, always save your work. So when you complete this screen, you can hit save or apply. If I hit save, it will automatically take me back out to the requisition summary. If I hit apply, it keeps me on the requisition administration screen. That's the difference between save and apply, but they both pretty much do the same thing. They just, once you hit apply, it takes you all the way back out to the summary screen, whereas apply will keep you on the requisition administration screen. So let's go to funding. Notice there's asterisks here, but beside the bona fide, need certifier, and fund certifier, fund certified by. This screen is very important, and I'm going to talk about this screen now, but also further down the road when we get into routing and approvals. On the funding screen, you can type in the person's name and it will input. But if you type in an error, the system will not be able to find that person under managers and reviewers, manage reviewers and approvers when it's time to create that. So always, 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 just so you avoid the issue of potentially creating an error, you want to click on the magnifying glass and you want to select the person from this red box. If there's a space here, or if there is a extra letter, or if it's someone's shortened first name, it will not link with the managed reviewers and approvers, and it will create an error, and you won't be as efficient with this. Same goes for fund certified. If you know the person's name, you have the ability to type it in, but I strongly recommend that you use the magnifying glass and select the person that you want as the fund certifying officer and the BFNC. Once you have done that, you can hit save or apply. And if you notice in addresses, even though we have information here, it's not necessary because there's no asterisks. So we're going to go back to the requisition administration screen. Make sure everything is inputted. And then we'll hit save. And you'll get a red message saying requisition successfully updated. Right now, we are going to talk about adding a line item. I'm only going to go a little bit into it, and then I'll have Tim finish up with you all. But this is where you would create your line items here. Any questions so far about inputting information? Right. Tim, you want to go over the line items and accounting codes? I'll stop sharing them.
Yep, give me 1 second.
Sure.
Can everybody see my screen? I'm back in C.Request.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So going into this requisition, and we're in the line item section. Oh, I think I'm in a different requisition, actually. Give me one. Apologies here. Here it is. Okay, so as you can see that I've got 3 requisitions, or I'm sorry, 3 line items already created. We're going to ignore that for the time being. I'm going to pretend as if there were no requisite or no line items previously created, and I'm going to click Create CLIN under Actions on the left side. Since I already have some line items created, it just automatically defaulted to the next available line item. But I'm just going to input 0001 as the default line item. I'll input a quantity of 1 and a cost of 100, just as an example. I'll put in a description. The UNSPSC and the FSC codes will automatically flow from the administration page. So whatever codes that you select when you input that on the administration page will auto-populate into each of the line items that you create. You can, however, change that, but I'm not sure if there's a scenario in which you would need to. But if there is, the system gives you the flexibility to do that. Quickly going through, again, my delivery date flowed through from the administration page. The supplemental address information should also flow through. I don't believe that there was anything on that administration page. And if you need to create the line item as an option, that tab is over here, and we have two selections available to us: base period and option period. And upon selecting any of those, you would be required to select a begin and end date for that period of performance. We'll talk about some of the options in a second. The one thing that I want to make sure that we get across when we're creating a new line item is that the line item number is important, especially if you are submitting a requisition to modify an existing award. So if you are requesting to modify an award where, let's say, for example, we're going to modify option year 1, and you know that the line item number structure isn't 0001, it's, for example, 101, or for a different option year, 201, you should be inputting that line item number here. This will create a reference within the system that will tell the associated documents that you are indeed wanting to modify this CLIN number. It's also going to let the contract specialists and contracting officers know that you are intending to modify 2001 instead of 0001. This is also important when we are talking about funding mods, because the way that the core financial system will work is that it tracks the commitment based on the line item level rather than the accounting code level. So it's very important that you make sure that you input the correct correct line item number in reference to whatever line item that you're wanting to modify, or that you would like the enterprise services contracting office to modify. So in this case, I'm going to create just 0001 for now. I'll hit apply, and as Julian said, it keeps me on the same page. The line item has been successfully added. So now let's talk about accounting. Under each line item, there is an accounting section under tools. Right now, there are no accounting codes here, so I'm going to create one. Under actions, on the left side of the screen, I have the option to click create. From here, I'll be able to input each of these segments. The numbers in parentheses next to each segment represents the length that you need to input for each of those codes. This is also important as these codes are loaded into the core financial system, and it's very important that you input these correctly. And you should be working with your budget person or your budget office to make sure that that you have the right information, and also to double check that you have input the correct information. We've seen a couple instances recently in the new fiscal year, which always happens, that some codes are not active or haven't been activated in the core financial system. So that's why it's important to make sure that you are checking these as you go through. I'll just input a random accounting code for right now using fiscal 20-year funds. And we can skip the BOK code. So for right now, because we've only got one accounting code, I'll choose the allocation and set it to %, and I'll make %100. And as you can see, that automatically populated the cost and the associated quantity with that amount. Conversely, I could set the allocation by cost, and this would allow me to enter in a manual cost. However, what that doesn't do is it sets the quantity down. So now I have an accounting code with a cost of 90, but a quantity of 1, and I'll show you why this is going to be an issue in a second. So I've got one accounting code that doesn't fully fund the line item. So I'm going to create a second accounting code. And if I just set the percentage to 100, you would see this automatically populate. I'll click save just for a second so that we can actually see what happens here on the accounting code screen. So I've got two accounting codes, one with a cost of 100 and one with a cost of 90, and both with a quantity of 1. Just real quick, I'm going to go back to this line item here, and I've only input one quantity onto the total line item. So your accounting actually needs to reflect that breakdown. So having a line item quantity, or I'm sorry, an accounting code quantity of 2 isn't going to work for this line item. We also have too much money here, where the total line item value should be no more than $100, or it should be $100 exactly, sorry. But we've got 190 here. So I've got to make some adjustments. Obviously, in a real situation, you would already kind of know what you need to fund things to. So I'm going to edit the first accounting code that I had. And instead of making this quantity 1, because it's got a cost of 90%, I can just easily do 0.9 and click save. And then for the second accounting code, maybe I meant to make this 10 instead of 100. So instead of allocating by percentage, the best thing to do is set the allocation to cost so that you can make a manual cost adjustment. And you would also have to make a manual quantity adjustment. Now, the number here doesn't quite matter. However, because it's pretty easy to do, 0.1 plus 0.9 equals 1, that's a quantity that I've kind of chosen here. And now we have both accounting codes input correctly with the sum cost, the total cost equaling the line item cost, and the sum total quantity equaling the line item quantity. If I had a third accounting code, I would then need to also make some adjustments to make sure that all three fit within the parameters that you set out from the line item. Do we have any questions about that? Cree has a question here about the line of accounting, especially the zeros, which sometimes causes a lot of back and forth in the approving stage. Okay. I'm not exactly sure why, but each of those accounting codes, as you can see, has quite a few zeros after that. Usually what I end up seeing is that it's only the first 4 characters or the first 4 digits are the ones that actually should matter. But after you've input that specific code, the entire rest of the account code segment needs to be filled up with zeros. That's not an option that you have to not do that. CFS needs to take this information, and they have those specific parameters that are outlined here. If I only had 15 characters in this organization code, it would interpret that organization code as null, and it would return with an error. You don't have the option to do that. You need to make sure that you have input the entire length of the accounting code segment, 16. And if you don't have any extra, like if I know that my org code is 1109, then you have to assume that it's 1109 followed by 12 zeros. It's just a system thing. That's a function of the finance system. There's not really any way around that. So please just make a note of that going forward, especially if you're working with your fund certifying officers on that. In that same vein, let's talk about the accounting from the summary screen. This is where sometimes a lot of folks can get confused, and I'll give you an example of this. So let's note that I've got these two accounting codes here, FY23, and I've got two different project codes here. I'm going to create a completely different accounting code. So I've gone into the account code summary management screen, right? This is where you can establish account defaults. What I'll do here is I'll create, and it's going to take me to the similar screen. Actually, I'm going to input a completely different bureau code, which for future reference, you can only have one bureau code on your line or on your requisition. I'll give you an example of that later. But for right now, I'm going to input this accounting code, and I'll give you an example when we create a line item of how this kind of comes into play. So I'm going to set this one as the default, and I'm going to set the default percentage to 50% for right now, and I'll click Save. So now we see this accounting code created. It is set to the default. I've got a default percentage of 50, but as you can see here, the number of line items that is being used on is 0. So it's got a 0 cost, 0 base amount, and 0 option amount. Let's remember that this is the account code summary management screen. This was accessed from the requisition summary. All right. It's very, very important that you understand and that you're able to track where you are when you're creating those accounting codes. All right. It is a little confusing, I understand, because it says accounting out here, and we've also got accounting codes within the line items. I'll show you now why it's important to understand where you are. So I've created that default accounting code. Now I'm going to create a new line item. And let's go with 002. We'll go 1 and we'll go 100 as well. I'm going to hit apply. And then when I go to accounting, that default accounting code that I had created from the summary screen automatically populated on that line item. And because the default percentage that I applied to that was 50%, this accounting code automatically came in with 50% of whatever that line item cost was. Now, here's the thing. I created a new line item and that default accounting code populated. If I go back to any of the previously created line items that I had, you'll notice that that line of accounting is nowhere to be seen. Default accounting codes only reflect only populate on new line items that were created after the default accounting code was established. So if you create your line items first and then create a default accounting code, you're doing it backwards. The reason why you would want to use a default accounting code is, let's say you had 10 line items that were all using the same accounting code. Instead of creating 10 line items and having to create 10 accounting codes all at the same time, like, all at the same time, and having to repeat that process 10 times, you could establish a default accounting code or accounting codes that already do that. And in fact, I'll create another accounting code just as a proof of concept. This time, however, I'll set the percentage to 25. And I'll press save. However, as we can see here, this accounting code isn't being used on any of the line items. And because I created a new line item, this accounting code is now being used on that new one. So now that I have two default accounting codes, all subsequently created line items will now populate with this accounting code, or those two accounting codes, sorry. Create a CLIN. We'll just leave that here for now. Make this 0003. And once I go to accounting, I'll see two accounting codes here. These are the default accounting codes that came in from that accounting code summary management screen. Here's the issue with this. If you have input that accounting code incorrectly, or there's something wrong with it, or you need to change that, if you go and make a change to this accounting code, for example, this shouldn't be 55, this should be 51. This is an entirely new accounting code. It is now not being used on any of the line items. Any change that you make to the accounting codes on the summary management screen will not be retroactive in that change. Meaning, I made a change to this accounting code. The line items that already had that accounting code created will not reflect the change that was made. So if you need to make a change to an accounting code, you need to make it within the actual line item itself. So I'll go ahead and make that change here. And I'll press save. So now I've got 51 as the bureau code. If I go to the accounting code outside in the summary screen, it now matches, but again, I made that change to this default accounting code, and it didn't retroactively change the previously created line items that were using the default accounting code. That's a really important distinction that a lot of people end up making mistakes on, and that just causes additional lead time. So it's important to make sure that you understand that information. I know it's slightly confusing, so I'll open up the floor for some questions about what I just talked about. So do we have any questions? Antonio asked to clarify that default accounting code will only apply to that specific purchase request. That is correct. When you create another purchase request, the default accounting code will not show up for the new PR. Yes, the default accounting code that you create in this requisition is specific to this requisition. Gerard asks, I may have missed why you use a percentage other than 100 per accounting code. Gerard, if you have two accounting codes, let's say, for example, here, if you make each of these 100%, you're basically saying, I'm funding 100% of the line item using this accounting code. And then you're also going to do, if you do that on the next one, you're basically repeating this statement saying, I'm going to fund 100% of this accounting code, or 100% of this line item using this accounting code. So now what happens is that you've got 200% of commitment here. Does that make sense? Is there any benefit? Okay. Is there any benefit to creating a default accounting code versus just adding one to the specific line item? Yeah, so Derek, that's what I kind of was talking about here. So if you need to create, or if each of your line items has to use the same 5 accounting codes, you should create them in the default accounting code section right here. Because what you would then have to do if you didn't go about doing it that way, you'd have to create a CLIN and then create all 5 accounting codes, input the same ones over and over, and you'd have to repeat that for however many line items that you had. Whereas if you create a default accounting code, you could just knock that out in one shot here, like say I'm going to create 3 more. So now each new CLIN that I create will have 5 accounting codes. These 5 accounting codes populate. It's going to save you some time. And Gary Hill, yes. And Gary, if you want to chime in at any point, please feel free. Actually, didn't realize that you were going to be on this training, but Gary is our CACI representative. He is the program manager for Comprizon Suite. He's a wizard amongst all things here, so he also provides a lot of additional support.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, another thing that this can be used for is where you do the search for on the accounting defaults. If you were looking for maybe you have 100 line items and there's an accounting code that on one of the line items that you're looking for, you can look for, you can use this screen to find where that accounting code, what line item or line items that accounting code is being used on.
So as an example of what Gary was just talking about, I clicked into this accounting code on that on the account code summary detail menu, and within here it shows me that this account code is being used on line item 0002. So there are in fact some uses for this for sure. So that's why some people choose to use it all the time. Some people choose to use it none of the time. But it is something that is available to you. However you want to input your line items is fine. But this is just kind of a quality of life, not improvement, but a potential quality of life improvement for you if you need to use it. If we have 5 different accounting codes, does it make sense to have a default? I probably wouldn't do that because that would probably create more work for you, Brenda. Because if you're creating multiple CLINs off of that, like if you have 5 CLINs and you're creating 5 specific accounting codes, it would probably be best just to create each CLIN with their specific accounting code. Hamid asks, are you planning to go over the import and export feature in the line item section? Gary, can I pose this question to you? Because there's a reason why we haven't used the import and export feature at Commerce for quite some time, or there's a reason why I think a lot of folks didn't end up using that.
You're asking me why people don't use it?
Or yeah, I think I recall there's some sort of like, so can we import line items from an Excel spreadsheet, or can we export these line items to the spreadsheet? I mean, exporting obviously isn't an issue, but what about importing?
It can be done. It's it's a little complicated, but it can be done. I have not seen anybody at Commerce or heard of anybody at Commerce using it.
So it used to work. Okay, so let's maybe table that, Hamid, and then we can kind of talk about that maybe on a side note. I believe there was some sort of issue, especially with it may have been related to the text fields, potentially importing something from a Microsoft product into Comprizon Suite can cause some potential issues. I'm not totally sure on that, but we can tag up on that. Terrence asks, if it's a newly awarded contract, do I include the base plus 4 option periods for the initial requisition, or do I create a new line item each fiscal year associated with the accounting code? Well, not every award is going to have a base plus 4 options, right? So that would really depend on, I guess, the type of contract that you're creating, or do I create a new line item each fiscal year associated with the accounting code?
I would answer that question. Yes, you can add your base in 4 option years. As a matter of fact, that's how our contract with Department of Commerce is done. They created the base and all 4 option years on the main contract, in the base year.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, so yeah, Terrence, let me give you an example of that real quick. So let me get into the line items here. I'm going to create, let's call this option period 1, and let's just give it a POP of next year to the following year. Okay, so now I've got 101001 here. Let's make 0001 the base period. And then I can just give it, let's say the period of performance is today till next year. You could repeat that process by copying, so let's say you have 3 base period CLINs. I'm going to copy this. And I'll renumber this very quickly just to make sure that we have some clarity. And oops, renumber single 1003. Okay, so now I've got my base year and my option year 1, and then you could create 3 or however many more base plus 4 options. You could copy these and then just change the period of performance as well. Does that kind of make sense, Terrence? The option periods, the option years shouldn't be associated with an accounting code.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
So for example, right here, because I've copied this, right now I've got 2 associated accounting codes here. This should be completely blank.
If they're not funded, you should not have accounting codes on there.
Yeah.
It wreaks havoc with the finance system.
Yeah. The other thing is, for any sort of funding action, you want to make sure that you either leave the option period blank or you make it a base period. So let's say that you're actually, it's time to fund, let's say that it's actually time to fund option year 1. If you created this CLIN as an option period rather than leaving it blank or calling it a base period, which isn't probably correct to do, what will happen is that CFS, the core financial system, will automatically zero out any commitment amount that you had associated with this line item. So when you are funding something, or when you're creating a CLIN to fund an option year, to fund and exercise an option year, just leave the option period blank. That CLIN, that option period CLIN, already exists on the contract. All you're doing is creating a reference to that line item. So it would be better if you just created it as this with the associated line item number, as structured on the contract. The contracting specialist and contracting officer will know what you're talking about as long as you have this associated line item number. And again, just to reiterate, when you're funding an option year, do not mark that CLIN as an option year. Some quotes come with credits. How does C.Request handle credits? If the application does not accept credits, should we have the vendor remove the credit CLIN on the quote and adjust the remaining CLINs absorbing the credit? Gary, do you have any insight on the discounts or that question? I would just lean towards just provide the amount of provide the commitment amount as you need your program to provide it for, like that amount. Because on the C award side, that's where we can input like a discount or a credit or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the finance system handles it. We're typically putting those credits in on the total screen on the award, but I don't think that the finance system handles those.
So the reason why I asked that question is because OFM, our financial management folks, they go by what's on the quote itself. And if we put exactly what's on that quote, it was kicked back because I was told that the C.Request cannot handle credits. But I'm trying to figure out what is the workaround to that. I mean, should we have the vendor go ahead and do what I asked on that particular question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the finance system with credits.
Yeah, I haven't ever heard the finance system being able to handle a credit, and that's not something that C.Request has. So, Brenda, we can maybe discuss that question offline, but most of the times I've seen discounts or credits applied on the C award side under the total section.
Okay, thank you. Because I have one that I just got today, and I'm wondering whether I should have the vendor adjust the quote to make it simpler.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
Brenda, I've had a couple of orders in the past where, the vendor has provided quotes, and we have included like a $0 CLIN, reflecting that because you're buying this, you get this. It's usually like a bundle or something. And so there might be, some switches or some cables or something that comes along free with the order. And so because we wanted to match what the quote said, so, it would be obvious that we weren't forgetting or overlooking something that was provided on the quote. We've just done like a $0, CLIN for it, or as Tim is saying, the specialist can capture it, kind of in the body of it, depending on, how you send the PR over. So I think either is sufficient, whether it just shows up as a $0 CLIN. And I don't think I had an issue with it, Tim, with a $0 CLIN. In this case, it was maybe Census and NIST that we had those orders. It was a big equipment buy. And again, because it's a bundled kind of thing, there were certain things that were, free to the government because it was already priced in something else. And so either it can be done in the text, or again, I've actually had some $0 CLINs on the order. So I think the specialist should be able to work with you either way, however you want to have it represented, and maybe just the communication up front to let them know, hey, I know if you do the $0 CLIN, I know that I have some $0 CLIN, but it's, in accordance with the quote that I got from the vendor, because sometimes it's important that we show that we're getting, or we're supposed to get, a particular something that goes along with that order. So I kind of defer to the $0 CLIN so I can represent that item on the order that matches the quote.
Yes, and Jean, we can take this offline, but I just thought I'll ask it in this genre, since we're, folks might have the same thing. But, specifically, if I have like 3 CLINs, and I have one, $1,000, and one like $5,000, and then the third one, a $500 $500 credit. I can't just think for the vendor and say, where's this $500 going to be credited from? You know what I mean? And we're not allowed as the government to make that assumption. And so to make a $0 claim, that would not be the case in this particular example. So, you know, we can talk about this online, but, you know, OFM, they just totally, you know, will kick it back. And then we're stuck trying to figure out how we will make this happen, you know, by going back to the vendor to make some adjustments or however. But again, I don't want to take up too much time, but that's something that we needs to be discussed. And I thought people might have that same question.
Yeah, thank you, Jean, and thanks, Brenda, for the question. So I'm just going to answer one last question before we have to move on to the next topic. Roseanne is asking, the U.S. field used a prior year deposit funds. Is it still the same that I need to type all the prior year accounting codes in the remarks section? I think you mean the description section. How many accounting codes can you put in the system? So to answer your question, and for some folks out there, there are some programs or some small bureaus or some customers that have multi-year funding, you know, 2-year, no year money. We cannot input prior year codes in the system and have an actual cost and quantity associated with that. So just to give you an example, if I put an FY21 accounting code in here, and just imagine, if you will, that I input it there and then I actually had a quantity and cost associated, the core financial system would reject that, even though, yes, we understand that you have multi-year or no year money. The way that you need to go about doing that, you need to input that accounting code in the description. So you could first, obviously, input it here and then just copy it, but that needs to be input into the description of the accounting or of the line item, and then you would also need to identify like the quantity 1, cost, you know, 200, for example. And again, that's just to kind of avoid the issues that we'll have with the finance system. Okay. So I understand that we have a lot of questions, and I definitely appreciate the discussion. We'll have some time at the end for some more questions. I definitely appreciate the discourse, though. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is our realignment structure or deobligation structure, if you will. This kind of goes directly into what I was just talking about with our prior year funding. So I'm going to open up this CLIN 1005. This is our deob example. So I'm going to have deobligate $1,200 from this CLIN and obligate to CLIN 1002. Notice that I've got a 0 quantity here and a 0 cost here, and I have no accounting code here. I would need to input an accounting code in the description of the text. So 51, 22, et cetera, et cetera. So this is our PR. This is one way of doing a deobligation. So I would have the cost here. I would deobligate $1,200 from this CLIN and obligate to CLIN 1002. So this is kind of more of a realignment, but let's just assume that we're just deobligating here. I would need to indicate the accounting code just so that the contract specialist has an idea of it within the description. Or you could create it here, 51. 22. I'll just fill in some of these with X's for now, just so that we have an example of that. So we have this accounting code created here as well, but we still have a 0 cost, 0 quantity, 0 percentage. All of that needs to be indicated in the description block of that line item. All right, so we have to do things kind of manually by text rather than inputting it in here. And that's just to make sure that we're not sending over any information that will get rejected by the core financial system. All right, because the money already exists on the award, you're just, again, making a reference to this CLIN. So I'm making a reference to CLIN 1005 on whatever award I'm sending in a requisition for, and that would need to, that would need to match the whatever line item is on the award that you would want to make sure that you have. The other thing is that where possible, we would want to make sure that you provide a UDO report, and also work with your vendor to make sure that they stop invoicing against that specific CLIN. There have been a lot of times where we receive a deobligation requisition, and we try to input the requested amount, like deobligating $1,200. But if they've already invoiced, let's say they invoiced $300 from, against that CLIN, I can't deobligate $1,200 anymore. So you would just want to make sure that you submit the most recent UDO report if possible. Okay, so this is the CLIN receiving the money. So this is the realignment example. So I've got some things kind of built out here. I've actually got a quantity here, and I've got a cost. This is the CLIN receiving the money. So in the description, I've got kind of the full kind of summation of what action is being requested here. Deobligating $1,200 from CLIN, from the previous CLIN, I guess we can just put that there. Deobligate $1,200 from another CLIN. Obligate a total of $2,400 to CLIN 0001. The previous value of 0001 was $1,200. The new total value will be $3,600. So whatever CLINs that you're working with, you just want to make sure that you're referencing the right one here. Obviously, we've got kind of a mishmash right now. So this can potentially cause some confusion. And I hope you understand why, because if we're sending over CLIN 3001 here, but then you're referencing a bunch of different line items in the description, and then versus what's over here, that can create a lot of confusion. So it's just best to make sure that you are working with your contract specialist as well to have the structure of the CLIN that you need to actually be, taking money from, moving money onto, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to hit apply right now and just go to the accounting code section. Now here we've got two FY22 accounting codes, which is all fine and dandy. But since this is, we're talking about FY23, we would obviously want to make sure that this is FY23. Or if you are supposed to be using FY22 funds, then we would need to make sure that these are blank or that these are zeros in order to process that prior year funding. Do we have any questions about that so far? All right, I know this is kind of a complicated topic. We're doing a deobligation and an obligation kind of in the same action. It's been done frequently, or you can submit one requisition that has the deob CLIN and then one requisition that has the obligation CLIN. So there's a couple things going on there. The other thing is that we want to make sure that if you are submitting prior year funding, that the line item itself has to be zeroed out. Andre, yeah, how do you get a UDO report? You need to sign up for CBS. You need to register for that. So just I'm going to reference the quick reference guide just to kind of give you an example in text, or like kind of with screenshots of what I'm looking, or of what I've just kind of described. So give me one brief moment and I'll share I'll share a different screen here. All right. So yeah, in this quick reference guide, we've got it kind of broken down, the proper PR structure for the deobligation. And I just want to make a note that some of these, if it doesn't apply to you, especially for the requisition PIN, for example, our small bureau customers, your PIN format, your requisition format is already kind of pre-established. established for the OS customers. This is what you should do. You should follow along with this, so that you can select the O or the D just to make sure that that is kind of clear. And kind of what I've talked about is established on these through this quick reference guide. So at any time this is available on the portal, you can just use the portal and search for the quick reference guide, and it should pop up, and you'll be able to download it here. So we've got something that says PR structure for deobligation A versus versus B. Those were the two types of deobligation setup, CLIN setups that I was kind of referencing. One has the accounting code just manually written within the description of the line item, and the other structure has the actual accounting code created within the line item itself. But just note that both of these structures, both of these CLIN structures should not have any money built into the actual quantity and cost. You always need to reference that within the description of the line item. And same thing here. The quick reference guide also has a spot for the realignment structure. What we just kind of talked about is broken down with some screenshots here. This being the realignment example, this is the CLIN that's receiving the money. It has the two accounting codes kind of baked into that. So as the CLIN receiving the money, it's kind of easier. You're just building kind of a funding PR. And if this was current year money, you could have you could have your accounting codes kind of set up this way. Et cetera, with obviously the correct fiscal year. But if it's prior year funding, then obviously it needs to be $0. So any other questions about that? Again, what we just covered is going to be on the quick reference guide. And if you still need some assistance kind of dealing with that, or just kind of wanting to touch base with am I doing the structure right for these funds, please feel free to just reach out, create a ticket, and we can help you out with that. If there are no other questions, I'll turn it back over to Julian, and we'll talk about the review and approval process. And then once we get through that section, we can talk about, or we can open up the floor for some Q&A. For from the floor, or anything that we didn't get to cover, we can also kind of go back to that. But for right now, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll turn it over to Julian.
Hi everyone, sharing my screen. Can everyone see it? Okay. Yeah. All right, perfect. So you've created your requisition, you got everything set up. Now you want to get your managed reviewers and approvers set up. The first thing you want to do is go back to your administration screen under funding, and you want to reference, or you want to make sure that your bona fides needs certifier and fund certifier are present. And again, you want to use the magnifying glass to select. Can you type the names in? Absolutely. Could it cause an error? Absolutely. So just make sure you are clicking the magnifying glass and then selecting your BFNC and FCOs. So we have Gary Hill and we have Ms. Evans as the FCO. When you are creating your managed reviewers and approvers, you must use these same two people for your bona fides needs certifier as well as your fund certifier by. So now I'm going to go into managed reviewers and approvers. Now, some offices, you need more than just a BFNC and FCO. However, as far as C.Request is concerned, you only need those two. You only need a BFNC and an FCO, and it will go through. But your office may require others to be added on. You might need other individuals, you might need other teams to approve, but that's per your office. Again, only the BFNC and FCO are necessary for the requisition to be committed into the system. So the way you would add a review and approver is you would go here to add a user or add team. I'm going to explain add user first. So we're going to go into add user, and I believe it was Gary Hill. So just like the BFNC on the administration screen, we're going to select using the red check for our BFNC. Also, you want to keep it in order. So the BFNC would be first, and then the FCO would be second on your routing order. And I'll go over routing orders in a minute, but this, if you notice, it automatically pops in a 10 for your routing order, and it goes in increments automatically of 10. So the next routing order we create, which you'll see in a minute, would be routing order 20. So we're going to let it be 10, and approval required. Notice that it is checked. You can do a carbon copy, or you can do a view only. Of course, view only being that no approval is necessary, but you have to have an approval for BFNC and FCO. So approval required, we're going to say yes, and I'm going to hit save. And notice I have a routing order 10 for Gary Hill, who was our BFNC. Now I'm going to, let's see who that second person, Miss Evans. So we're going to create a routing order for the FCO. Notice the routing order automatically is working in chronological order. So 20. Actually, I'm going to put someone else. So let's say I have Tim there. So once I try to send this through, it will create an error because I have Tim as the FCO instead of Miss Evans. So let's say Miss Evans is out sick or not at work that day, and you really need to get this through today. You would have to change her from the routing order. Tim is her backup. So we have Tim here, and I also have to change it here on the administration screen under funding to match for Tim. Okay, so now on the funding, I have Gary and Tim. And on manager reviewers, I have Gary and Tim. They must match. I can add another user. Notice it receiving orders 30. And there I've added another user for approval. I can edit this person and just have them view it. So view only. I'm going to save. And now I have my BFNC, my FCO, and I have Julian here just as a viewer. Notice it says view only, yes. I can delete this person by selecting delete, clicking OK, and now that number 30 is gone. I can add an entire team by adding team. Clicking the magnifying glass, and I can do, let's select FN test. I need them, the whole team to approve. So I'm going to save. And now I have the FN test team as my routing order 30 spot. I'm going to delete them. And then as long as I have my BFNC and FCO, I can release this and it will go to my BFNC for approval. Now, let's say I release this to Gary and I say, wait a minute, I have a correction that I need to do. I would hit recall. And once I hit recall, it will no longer be with Gary and come back to me. And then I can make the changes necessary that I need to change. So when, I'm not sure I'm gonna set this up. Let's see.
If you hit oh, I'm sorry. If you hit release on the first route.
Okay.
Yeah. There is one thing that I wanted to cover as well. Yeah, if you hit release here, and then do we see where the status says review pending by Gary? Now, could you mark route order 10 and click recall? So in that example that Julian just mentioned, he released it to Gary for review, but then he wanted to make some corrections, so he recalled the route from Gary. The system's automatically going to create a duplicate route under that same person that you just recalled it from. So that's why Gary's on here twice. If you need to remove somebody from that route, sorry?
Benita, how you doing?
How you doing, Tara? Tara,
Yeah.
I gotta ask you a question.
Uh-huh.
Who is you guys' security person? What's that black girl?
Anissa?
Anissa?
Can we all mute our microphones? Thanks.
Okay. Yep, sorry about that. So if I just if I wanted to remove that person entirely from the route, let's say Gary is no longer going to be the BFNC, you could delete route order 20. But if we try to delete route order 10, can you click on that and try that? The system will give you an error. Now, it's fine that it's there, and it's not a big it's not going to cause an issue that route order 10 is there, because that status has been already used up. That route order has already been used up. I kind of think of this as like a dominoes, like a chain of dominoes. Once you knock one over, it's just going to keep going. And if you need to pull one out, then you've got to pull the next one down. You can't pull out you can't pull out a domino that has already been knocked over. It's already been used up. You can just add someone else to it, or you can add or you can do what you need to. But the point being is that once a status or once a route already has that status on it, recalled or approved or rejected, you can't change that. So just wanted to get that. Sorry, Julian. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Tim. Also, Tim brings up a very interesting point. So we recalled it from Gary, and we know Gary is in the Bahamas. So we're going to add Julian Wilson as the BFNC. We're not done here. So we have to make sure that we go back to the summary and we go back to administration, go to funding, and then take Gary out and put in Julian Wilson as the BFNC. Remember, whatever you have in the administration under funding, BFNC and FCO must match what you have for the BFNC and FCO here. Like Tim was saying, this domino has already been used, so we cannot go back in and do anything with 10. But if I release it now, it will not go to 10 because it's already been recalled. It will go automatically to 20 for Julian Wilson, and then on to Tim for signature. And then it can be committed. Now let's talk about the commitment and the submitting feature. So this requisition has to be committed first. And again, it follows the routing sequence that we have here. The FCO, and this is very, very important, the FCO is the only person that can submit this requisition. Again, the FCO is the only person that can commit this requisition. I'm going to actually flip these so I can go in and show you guys a little bit of what's going on here. So I'm going to make Tim the BFNC. Yeah, so that wouldn't actually. Actually, it won't work because it would go to Tim. So let's pretend.
I can Julian, if you want to just release it, I can go through the commitment process if you like.
Okay. So we're gonna flip them.
Or you can leave it as is, because with the BFNC needing to approve first, the FCO should always be second anyways.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna release it. All right. And review pending by Julian Wilson. So I'm the BFNC. Gary's on vacation. So I'm going to go in my inbox. And this is very important also. Sometimes, more often than not, a lot of times a BFNC will just go in and just mark it and hit approve. This is your chance as a BFNC to make sure that everything is correct with this requisition. So you want to actually go in to the requisition and you want to check everything, fine tooth comb. You want to go into the summary screen and make sure your dollar values are all correct here. You also want to go into the administration screen and you want to make sure everything with an asterisk is filled in. All your money is correct. Your contract number for your mod is correct. You just want to, as a BFNC, you want to do your due diligence as the BFNC and make sure the line items and accounting are all correct. This is where you can, as a BFNC, make sure that this requisition is 100%. So once I have deemed that it is, I'm going to mark it and then hit approve. Approve. Signature password.
If you don't have your signature password, Julian, we can kind of skip this portion, or
Okay.
I can kind of get to the commitment side.
Okay, so I would put my signature password in. Any comments? I can disapprove and then put a comment. Hey, you forgot Clan, I don't know, 5001 or something to that. But I would hit approve and then I would hit save. Once I do that, it would go from so once I do that, it would say approved here and it would go directly to Tim.
Yeah, and it would be then in my inbox.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then Tim would be able to go in and do his due diligence also as the FCO, make sure all the funding is correct, everything is correct. There are two things that Tim would need to do as the FCO. One is approve. Two, he would then submit. A lot of times,
or commit. It's
sorry,
you would
commit.
yeah. The FCO would need to commit first before attempting that approval process that Julian just outlined. And I think, Julian, sorry if I cut you off, but I think what Julian was about to say is that a lot of FCOs will end up, I'll just go ahead and share my screen now,
Sure.
If that's all right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times an FCO will end up trying to just click commit, and then let's just see, you know, nothing will, like that screen flash will kind of appear, and then, oh, great, like it's all done, ready to go. But the thing that you want to make sure that you actually see is that save and post screen, which I'll kind of navigate to in a second. But because I didn't get to that point yet, I shouldn't approve this requisition. Like I shouldn't click that and then click, you know, approve or disapprove or anything quite yet. Because what we're looking for is a financial transaction to be triggered. And so in the case of this requisition here, this one got rejected. So if I had approved this requisition as an FCO, that means I approved a requisition that wasn't actually accepted by the finance system. And then that would mean that I would have to add, or the requisitioner would have to add me again to the list in order for me to even try the commitment again. So in this case right here, I've got a review pending for this requisition, and because this was rejected, I shouldn't go in and approve this route. All right. So the commitment is kind of the function of an FCO is kind of a two-step process. You need to click. You need to go through, obviously, do your due diligence and check the check the requisition, check the line items, check the accounting codes. You need to click commit and then wait for the commitment to come back with an approved response. If it has a rejected response, you can check the error message under this financial under this tab right here, this menu option. I'll click view status, and then I'll click message, and then let me actually try and share my full window so that you can see. Okay. So again, coming from this this view status, this financial transaction screen, I click view status. I go to click the blue message, and here's the transaction message. This is coming from the finance system. A lot of times it's a little bit difficult to tell like what exactly the error message is. But in this case, it says, you know, we've got invalid inactive task codes, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a clear marker of like, okay, we need to check these accounting codes. We need to check what we have input in C.Request, and then we need to work with the finance system to make sure that we have actually activated those accounting codes, those code segments, or the combination thereof. The other issue that kind of pops up frequently is where we just see that kind of screen flash, and I think we all kind of saw it before, where this is the requisition that Julian had just recently sent. So if I try to click commit here, the screen flashes, and we just have this pop-up window, and it'll have a local validation will appear that says bona fide needs certifier has not approved this this requisition. So that means that in this case, Julian, as the BFNC, is still needs to approve this requisition before we can even get to the point where we can click save and post. So this is a really important distinction to make here. So this is an actual system issue. This is an error in the internal review and approving process. The other example that I just previously pulled up in the view status section, that was from the finance system. So real quick, I'm just gonna, you know, just so that we can all see it, the commitment screen. Give me 1 second here. The commitment screen should be an entirely separate window or menu or screen that you see. So if you just see the screen flash and you stay at the same spot, that means that you didn't do it. And obviously here I've got another error as well. Each funded line item must have an accounting code. So it's giving me, okay, so 1001 has an issue. Just for sake of time, I'm just going to delete this real quick. I'm going to try the commitment again. It's going to take me to another screen. And now I can click Save and Post. So this is kind of the most important thing. If you're an FCO and you're not able to get to this Save and Post point, you're not actually committing the requisition. So I'm going to click that, and then now I see that I've got a triggered financial transaction right here, which says sent awaiting response. So this is what we would want to see. You should still wait to approve the requisition because you don't know if this is going to come back as approved or rejected. Just like in the other example, the commitment actually had a rejected response. So in that case, if I had approved it, that means I approved something that had errors or issues with it. And you're not going to be able to submit the requisitioner isn't going to be able to submit that requisition to the contracting office because it's got some errors. So usually this process takes, a couple minutes, and we don't really have to kind of wait for it to come back. This one will probably be rejected because it's in the test environment. But that's kind of review and approval in a nutshell. Julian, did you have any kind of closing thoughts about that topic before we move into the Q&A?
No, you pretty much covered everything. I just wanted to also reiterate that when you have that commitment sending, waiting for response, you want to make sure that you, like you said, get an approval response. If you try to go in and submit this without waiting for the approval response, it will not submit.
Yep. So right here, we've still got it in sent awaiting response. So, we're still, this one's still not good to approve quite yet. So
exactly. Any other questions on this?
Looks like Tamara's got a question. Did I understand correctly that the FCO is the only person who submits to ESA contract office? No. Sorry, that was just kind of a misspeak or misspoken. The FCO is the only one that can commit, but the requisitioner is the one who needs to submit. Sorry, yes. There's two different words, two different functions. So the fund certifying officer, the FCO, is responsible for the commitment of the requisition. Once that is done, once that is approved, so like this requisition actually just got approved, then the FCO can approve on their side, and then once all the routes have been cleared, everybody has approved the routes, then the requisitioner, the owner of the requisition, can submit to ESA. Terrence, the current uploaded user guide still has, yes, so yeah, as I stated before, so the quick reference guide on the portal needs to be updated. So this is the new one that will replace that. So the new user guide will be uploaded within a couple weeks. Antonio, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure whether you guys were taking questions now if we're in the question and review period, but if
yes, we are in Q&A if anybody has any questions. Sorry.
Okay, so a question I asked earlier, back in the late July, August timeframe, I took training on this business application solution, which was a forecasting tool that was supposedly going to replace CBOT, which replaced FAPS. So I was curious what you're doing the new QRG. Will that be implemented this fiscal year or maybe next calendar year in actual 23?
The BAS forecasting tool is in effect now.
Oh, okay. I haven't created nothing new, so I was just curious on that.
Yeah, so CBOT is no longer being used as the department's forecasting tool. That is now through Prism.
Okay. And if I can ask one more question, if no one else has a question, and this might be more of a suggestion, but how hard would it be to put something on the website with regards to like blanket purchase agreements out there that ESA has, and that we could kind of look at those statement of works to see if it, works for us, and then we use that contract number. Is that something that's doable?
So I think something like that already exists. I know that the SSI catalog is already on the portal. I don't know if Gene is still on the call. Gene, if you want to chime in, please feel free. But I believe that is already on the portal. So if that's what you're referencing, Antonio, then that already exists.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Brenda. I just got one question. Oh, I apologize. Someone has their hand up. I'll put my hand up.
Actually, I'm trying to take my hand down. So go ahead.
Okay. I got on the call late. I was wondering if you had a chance to go over sharing a PR.
No, actually, we did not do that. But since Julian, you're sharing your screen right now, if you want to cover how to share a requisition.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go to just any requisition that I have in test. So we'll go with this one. And let's say I wanted to share this with Tim. I'm going on vacation soon, and I want Tim to take over and get this committed and submitted. I would simply move, let's see, I would go to under property sharing. I would click sharing, and actually look, I've already shared it with Tim. Let's say I wanted to share it with someone else also. I can add a whole team, or I can add a user. I would click add user. I can search for them. And I want to share it with Gary Hill. I have two options. I can give him full access, or I can just give Gary view only. View only, he would not be able to make any changes. Full access, he can make just as many changes as he would like. I want to give Gary full access. I would click that and hit add select. And now Gary has full access to this requisition. Any questions about sharing?
No, thank you.
When you do the sharing, how long does it take for the person that you're sharing? I mean, is it like 30 days that he or she have access?
No, there's good question, actually. There's no time limit. So that requisition is shared with Gary throughout its life cycle. So Gary can go in just like the original person who created it at any time and make whatever changes necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So once I share it, suppose the PR has already been awarded, okay, and I have a contract that one of my coworkers is working similarly on, or she has been now named the core going forward. Okay, instead of her having to do the whole thing over again, if it has like 15 cleanse, can I share it with her, and she would be able to do a copy, so she don't have to do all those cleanse all over again,
Yes.
and make it her own.
Mhm.
And so
Absolutely.
with that, so I would have to give her full full access of the already awarded contract.
Well, you
And
would
then
just
she'll
go,
be able to do a copy.
yes, absolutely. So she would just go into search for the requisition, bring the, I'm sorry, you would go into the requisition, bring it up and just hit share. And then click them full access. And then they have full access to go in. They can make copies. They can make changes if it has not been submitted already. They have full access to it to do whatever they would like to do with it.
Okay, excellent.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions about sharing? All right. Any other Q&A questions about overall any requisition things? All right, I'm going to kick it back over to Tim. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yep, I'll leave the Q&A open for a couple more minutes. If no one else has any other questions, we can obviously dismiss early, or if you need to jump off this call, feel free. Sharing after submit, disregard, I believe it was just, okay, all right. Yeah, if anybody has any last minute questions, please feel free.
Hey, Tim, it's Demetria. How you doing?
Hi, Demetria.
Good. Yeah, I do have a quick question. So going back to where it showed when we entering the information in and it asks for CBOT, and I know CBOT is no longer existing, but can that be blank or do you have to put something in that field?
So good question. So let's actually go to that here. There should be in production a CBOT number that says not required. So if you are not required to input a, let's say, AAP number, an advanced acquisition planning number, then it should be 4 zeros or it should be 000. But either way, you can search. You can use the search bar or function to input that. I think in production it's also 000.
Okay. And for advanced acquisition planning, is that only for if we're doing a brand new contract? What if we're doing a renewal and we may have already had a CBOT number prior to going to AAP? Do we still just put zeros there?
Can you clarify what your question was? So let me just try and understand. So if you are creating a requisition for an existing order or an existing action, do you use the same CBOT number that already existed? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I would think so, but to be honest, I'm not totally sure. I'm not totally sure how because there is no interface, obviously, between the C.Request system and the new acquisition or the new AAP system of record, which would be Prism. So there's no interface there. So I'm actually not sure how that kind of function works. Gary, I'm not sure if you are on the call either. Still, so yeah, Gary, I don't know if you know the answer to that question.
No, I'm not sure what the question was. Sorry.
Okay.
I got a
Zeros it will
question.
be. Thank you.
I got a question about CBOT too. So the new one is Prism, you said?
Yes.
And how do you get to the site and create if you need to do a new CBOT number?
You would have to contact the Prism folks.
And where?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not sure what I mean, I think it's Lindsay Hockenberg or something like that, but yeah, that would be a separate group of people.
So this is Antonio again. So when will the change out from that CBOT number to either Prism or BAS be placed on these purchase requests that we're creating?
Not totally sure if I have an answer for that. Gary, are you aware of how that's going to work?
When is the switch? Well, I mean, what's the question? Is it switch over to BAS or is it this?
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, based off of Tim and or Julian's comments to CBOT, and I'm just not quite sure what name they're going to use, or but it's been referred to as BAS and it's been referred to as Prism or BAS Prism. My question is, do we have an idea on these purchase requests when that name will be swapped out from CBOT to again BAS and or Prism?
Well, the BAS it's the BAS or Prism will have. Yeah, that's not going to be for another year or two, my understanding.
So, wait. So, I thought we were using the advanced acquisition planning in Prism right now. And Prism as the new contract writing system isn't coming out for. Oh, it has not launched. Okay, all right. So, I guess that answers your question. That I'm aware of. Yeah. So Antonio, BAS is that. So we are currently sunsetting Comprizon Suite, and Prism will be the new contract writing system of record for the Department of Commerce. It is managed by BAS. So they're picking up all of the financial system. Like everything is basically going to transition from Comprizon Suite to Prism. And a different team will be supporting that effort to start. Julian and I will still be around, obviously, to provide system support. But for any BAS or Prism related questions, you would need to direct that to those POCs, as we don't have that access, or no one is managing that system quite yet, except for the BAS folks.
All right, thank you.
Brenda, so in the meantime, should all zeros go in CBOT? What I would honestly just continue to operate with the same just continue to use the CBOT system as you are currently using it now. And if there's something that we need to discuss, or maybe draft a policy memo about, or send out some information, we can address that. I would suggest, as long as it fits and it doesn't make a comment in the P. Is BAS Prism replacing C.Request system to enter new PRs? If so, what is the timeline? Terrence, yes, it is. For that information, I would ask that you at least reach out to the BAS folks. I think a lot of that information has been kind of passed out and given out. We're focusing on C.Request for right now. So I do have the timeline. I just don't have the information readily available to me, Terrence, but you would need to reach out to the BAS folks for that. When creating a new PR, is the last field after the fiscal year auto-populated, or do we need to enter the information for this field? Terrence, are you talking about that last field? In this case, because this is a small bureau customer's PIN setup, the last field of any PR, though, in regardless of what customer you are, is the counter code. This is an automatic. This will automatically be populated by the system. It's like the count, the PR count, for example. All right, lots of good questions. We got 2 minutes left. Does anybody else have any parting questions or anything that they would like to go over?
Also, real quick, this training will be uploaded to the portal. You'll be able to search the portal for C.Request training, and you'll be able to find this training once it is uploaded. It's not immediate, so just give us a little bit of time, and we'll get this training uploaded for you, and you'll be able to search it on the portal.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, thanks everybody for jumping on and sitting through. And I hope this has been helpful to you. And as Julian said, a lot of the documentation will also be uploaded onto the portal as well. The quick reference guide that exists on there now is outdated. The new one that you saw earlier will be uploaded to reflect some of the newer information. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day and a great rest of your year. Yes. Brenda? Oh, no questions. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.